Hey guys, Larry here, and for today's video, I'm going to be talking about the best and worst iteration of all characters in Smash competitively. This time I'll be doing characters that debuted in Melee. If you haven't watched the previous video where I talk about the 64 characters, I'll have that linked in the description. Before I start, I want to address a couple of the comments I've gotten in the last video. The first one is about me selecting Brawl Link as his worst iteration. Yes, 64 Link does have a terrible recovery, but that one specific thing does not make him worse than Brawl Link. There is more to a character than just having a good recovery, like how good their neutral is, how reliably they can take stocks, and so on. I'm rating characters relative to how good they are in their respective games. So yes, if you take 64 Link and put him in another Smash game, he'd be horrendous. But in 64, despite being one of the worst characters in that game, he's not as bad due to how balanced that game is compared to the other ones. One of the other comments I want to address are the ones saying that Jigglypuff's worst iteration competitively is Brawl. And honestly, I think it is debatable, but I still think it's Smash 4. Brawl Jigglypuff was very bad as well, but without going into much detail, I want to explain why I chose Smash 4 over Brawl. Like I said in the first video, the mechanics of 4 do not benefit Puff at all. Rage hurts Jigglypuff a lot because she's the lightest character in the game, and for that same reason, she's most likely not going to be able to survive long enough to actually abuse the mechanic. The lack of edge hogging in Smash 4, on top of the fact that Jigglypuff's jumps got nerfed, make it much more difficult for her to actually edgeguard characters, which is the main thing she's supposed to excel in. This also makes edgeguarding her noticeably easier compared to the other Smash games. To top it all off, she's arguably the worst character in the entire game. Like I said, it's highly debatable, but that's just a quick summary as to why I think Smash 4 Puff is worse than Brawl. Alright, now let's actually get into the video. You know, people think that Glitch is just this energy drink that you could use for your daily activities, but there was a time where it actually saved my life.
Hey Larry, I heard you lost the chase! Don't ever think you can rob me, bro. You're gonna come at me, you gotta come correct. I keep that glitch on me.
And that is why I always keep a tub of Glitch on me. Stay safe in these dangerous times. Go to glitchenergy.com and use my code LarryLurr to get 20% off at checkout. To start things off, we have Peach, and the best version of this character is without a doubt Ultimate. At the start of the game's competitive life, she was considered one of the best, if not the best character in the game. This was due to her having one of the best combo games, insane pressuring tools, along with great edgeguarding and a good recovery. A lot of what I just mentioned is heavily contributed to her float, which is one of the best mechanics in Smash history, as well as her good frame data and hitboxes. Peach was such a strong character at the start of Ultimate that she was nerfed in a few of the first patch updates. Peach's worst competitive iteration is Brawl, but this honestly is not saying much considering Peach was still a solid character in that game. Coming from Melee to Brawl, Peach was nerfed severely because of the lack of combos the game had. She did have a chain grab, but it was on a very small number of characters. Move stealing hurt Peach a lot because her best attacks for winning neutral, racking up damage, and taking stocks would get stalled, making its kill power significantly weaker by the time the opponent got to kill percent. For those of you who don't know, move stealing is a mechanic that lessens the damage and knockback of an attack used, which is done to discourage players from using the same move repeatedly. This mechanic is in every Smash game, but it's by far the most relevant in Brawl. If it wasn't for this mechanic, or if Peach just had a little bit more kill power, I think it would be a lot more debatable between the Brawl and Smash 4 version of the character. The worst version of Bowser is Melee, who is arguably the worst character in that game competitively. He's laughably slow in a game that is extremely movement heavy, and thanks to his frame data and the knockback on his attacks, he has little to no combos compared to the rest of the cast. His best attack is probably Whirling Fortress, which is a good out of shit option, but unfortunately is terrible recovery wise. Even though he's the heaviest character in the game, it doesn't help him as much as you would think. It just makes him combo food, and thanks to his horrible recovery, he's not able to survive for long a lot of the time. The best version of Bowser I don't think is very clear cut. I think it's between Smash 4 and Ultimate Bowser. Overall, I think that Smash 4 was better. Though Ultimate Bowser is heavily benefited from the universal jump squat change, had his mobility stats slightly buffed, has a better tough guy, I still think Smash 4 Bowser is still a stronger character competitively. It's all thanks to the up throw combo that he had. He could do up throw into up tilt, up smash, and pretty much any of his aerials. It allowed him to easily rack up damage off of winning a single interaction and could take stocks off of characters at crazy low percents even without the use of rage. It also helped that Bowser had one of the best grab ranges in the game, especially his pivot grab, which had an insanely disjointed grab range for a non-tethered grab. Bowser's up throw combo was so absurd in Smash 4 that they actually nerfed it in the very next patch update, and even then, it was still insanely strong. It's funny because I think that Ultimate Bowser is a much more well-rounded and complete character, but Bowser's strengths are so good in 4 that it just outweighs the other things that Ultimate Bowser has in my opinion. Again, I think it's debatable, but let me know in the comments what you think. The best version of Ice Climbers is without a doubt Brawl. Ice Climbers are widely considered to be the second best character in that game behind Meta Knight. Tier list wise, they were considered to be in a tier with Meta Knight, or if not in a tier with Meta Knight, in a tier of their own just below him. The reason Ice Climbers were so good is that grabbing as a move in general was really good in Brawl because of its frame data. Not to mention a well-timed and spaced grab could beat attacks out due to having super armor when you successfully grab someone. Combine that with the fact that they have an infinite off of their grab that is a guaranteed death combo at any percent on every character, and it becomes significantly better. Additionally, Brawl is a game where combos and damage output are drastically worse compared to the other Smash titles. All of these things gave birth to one of the strongest characters in Smash history. The worst version of Ice Climbers is Smash Ultimate, which isn't saying much because we're seeing that the character is not that bad competitively thanks to Big D. A massive change Ice Climbers got that severely nerfed them is that only the Ice Climber the player is controlling can grab. On top of this, they don't have an easy to set up 0 to death combo from grab to my knowledge. It's not to say that they can't do 0 to death combos off of their grabs, it's just a lot more effort and not as guaranteed as it was in the previous games. The best version of Sheik is Smash 4, primarily the 3DS version of Sheik. This version of Sheik was the best character in the game. Beating her in neutral with any character was incredibly difficult, especially if the opposing character was at high percents, because needles could carry you across the stage and set up for edge guarding or to be ledge trapped. Getting grabbed at lower high percents was scary because at lower percents, she could easily start a combo to carry you across the stage, and at higher percents, she could put you in a 50-50 where guessing wrong guarantees you lose your stock. Sometimes she didn't even have to guess, she just had a guaranteed combo out of it. If you're at high percents, Sheik didn't even need to be near you to put you off stage. Her needles could easily reach across the stage, and if they hit you, they would put you in tumble. This made it easy for Sheik to gain stage control and set up for edge guarding and ledge trapping without any heavy commitments. So if you played Smash Wii U or heard things about it, you're probably wondering how 3DS Sheik is better because everything I mentioned, Wii U Sheik had just before she got nerfed. Well then, let me tell you, her up air was a noticeably stronger kill move, her bouncy fish was also stronger and could be edge cancelled, and her forward air did more damage and was slightly stronger because of it. Basically, imagine pre-patched Smash Wii U Sheik, except she had more kill power and did more damage. Brawl Sheik is the worst Sheik competitively. Coming from Brawl to Melee, she lost a significant amount of kill power. Her aerials did significantly less knockback, which was her best way of getting kills, and her smash attacks aren't very good. It also didn't help that recoveries were universally buffed, making it more difficult for her to edge guard. She does have one of the strongest up smashes in the game, but unfortunately because of how strong Smash DI is in Brawl, and it being multiple hits, it's possible to smash DI out of the strong hit and get hit by the weaker hit of the move. They did give her a tether recovery with her side special, which is the one and only time she's ever had one in a Smash title, which gave her a noticeable improvement to her recovery. She actually got a huge benefit from move scaling, allowing her to do inescapable combos by looping her forward tilt into itself. But it was also pretty percent and matchup dependent on how effective it was. The worst version of Zelda is Brawl's iteration. Brawl Zelda is arguably the worst character in that game. What makes Zelda so bad is that she doesn't have the mobility or frame data to keep up with other characters, and the moves that could help her are just inconsistent. Two of her strongest moves, forward air and back air, have an incredibly small sweet spot on it. If you don't get the sweet spot, the move is significantly worse and fairly useless since it could be negative on hit even at higher percents. Her down tilt has great frame data and could even trip and lead into combos. The problem is that it's not that big of a hitbox and you have to rely on getting close enough to your opponent to actually use it, and that they're grounded. One of Zelda's most reliable attacks is her up smash, which is fast and has a big hitbox that is very active. But the problem is that it has a tremendous amount of end lag. Her forward smash is also fairly reliable, except like up smash, it has a good amount of end lag. She also has one of the slowest grabs in the game despite it having an incredible range. Without going over all of her moves, just know that your risk reward regarding using attacks is pretty heavily not in your favor. You either use an attack that is fast but difficult to hit, or one that has a good hitbox but a lot of end lag. Her recovery is surprisingly not as good as you would think. Despite it going a long distance, it has a considerable amount of startup, and she doesn't get much horizontal momentum when she reappears. This reduces the amount of mix-ups she would have recovery-wise, and also makes edgeguarding her not that difficult. The best version of Zelda is easily Ultimate, though that's not really saying much because the other versions of her are just really bad. The biggest improvement to Zelda in my opinion is that her toolkit overall is just more useful compared to the other games. Her smash attacks can't be SDI'd out of, her moves have a reasonable amount of end lag, and while her forward and back air aren't as good as they were in Melee, they're still better than what they were previously. Another big improvement Zelda got was that her down special Phantom got buffed from Smash 4, making it a lot more usable. The best version of Dr. Mario is easily Melee. This is the only version of the character you can actually argue is competitively viable. Funny enough, this is also the most similar to regular Mario he has ever been in any of the games. The big difference between Mario and Dr. Mario in Melee is that Dr. Mario overall has more KO power than regular Mario. Despite having a better airspeed, he also has a slightly worse recovery due to not being able to wall jump, and his special moves being slightly worse than Mario's recovery wise. Even though their attacks look identical, most if not all of their moves are different in one way or another. The worst version of Dr. Mario was definitely the hardest part in making this video. Both Smash 4 and Ultimate Dr. Mario are roughly around the same tier in their respective games. I think overall though, I'd give it to Smash 4 Mario as being the worst. This is mainly due to me seeing Ultimate as being a more competitively balanced game than Smash 4, and for that reason, it's much more easier for worse characters to succeed competitively. I also think that Ultimate Dr. Mario has a much better matchup spread than his Smash 4 counterpart due to him not only having really good kill confirms like Smash 4 Doc does, but also having a criminally underrated outshot option that also kills and makes characters that have to fight him up close struggle a lot more than you would expect. Dr. Mario has some surprisingly strong combos and kill confirms, as well as a solid projectile, edge guarding, and anti-projectile zoning capabilities. The only reason he's as bad as he is due to his horrendous mobility combined with lack of range and having one of the worst recoveries in the game. This not only applies to Smash 4 Doc, but Ultimate as well. Even though Pichu made his debut in Melee, he's only been in 2 Smash games, so it's pretty clear cut what is his best and worst iterations. The best version of Pichu is Ultimate, specifically before patch 3.1 where he was considered a top tier character. He has a really good projectile that's good for pressuring, edgeguarding, and can be comboed into. He has great kill power and strong kill setups, amazing damage wrecking capabilities, edgeguarding, and recovery. The biggest drawback Pichu had was that he did damage to himself when he did electric attacks, on top of the fact that he was the lightest character in the game. Basically, he was a very strong glass cannon. The worst version of Pichu is Melee, who also has the same drawbacks I mentioned in Ultimate, except he isn't nearly as good. He's basically a worse version of Pikachu in that game, with a few hitbox differences on top of the 2 other things I mentioned. The best version of Falco is Melee. He's arguably the second best character in that game, or at the very least a top 4 character. Falco has the best projectile in the entire game, which is his laser. His laser is one of the best projectiles in Smash history thanks to its fast startup, having hit stun, and being able to auto-cancel the lag by landing with the move. Laser can help Falco control the pace of a match and can do just about everything except for help him recover. Like Melee Fox, he has a 1-frame shine, except his sends the opponent above him, allowing him to combo off of it. Falco also has the best downer in the entire game. His downer is an incredibly active spike that can kill you if you hit the opponent off stage with it, and if it doesn't kill, can be easily comboed out of. He's definitely one of the characters that come to mind when you're thinking about Melee. The worst version of Falco is by far Smash 4 Falco. This has been the only game where Falco is considered a low tier. They basically took everything that Falco is good at and nerfed it. His zoning is worse because his laser is the worst it's ever been, having noticeably more end lag, traveling slower, and not being able to auto-cancel it. His reflector also got nerfed, no longer reflecting throughout the entirety of the animation like it did in Brawl, and not being a combo tool like it was in Melee. His down air is slower and significantly weaker, making the move the worst it's ever been. His side special is also slower, the hitbox doesn't cover the entirety of the animation, they reduce the distance he could travel compared to Brawl, and he can no longer cancel it, removing a lot of the mix-ups he had with it. The one buff that it did get is that he no longer went into freefall after using it. He did get more improvements such as having a noticeably stronger back air that came out on frame 4, but aside from that and a couple of other changes, he was much worse of a character overall. The best version of Marth is Melee, which should come as no surprise. Like Falco, you can argue that he's the second best character in that game, and he has been a dominant force in the game's competitive life since the very beginning. He has phenomenal mobility, great recovery, the best dash in the entire game, crazy range with his sword that allows him to effortlessly combo the opponent, and also the best grab in the game, which he uses to chain grab spacies and combo them to death, especially on FD. His tipper is by far the easiest it's ever been to land, and it's incredibly rewarding due to how strong his kill power is. I think this one is going to surprise most of you, but the worst iteration of Marth is not from Smash Ultimate, it's actually Smash 4 Marth. Now you guys might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought Marth was really good in Smash 4 and was considered top tier. You're absolutely right, he was, but that was after a ton of patch updates. Marth is probably the most buffed character in Smash 4. Pre-patch Marth couldn't combo out of jab 1, all of his aerials were weaker, had more end lag, and it was harder for him to land the tipper hitbox on them. It was also harder to land tippers with his tilts, and his up tilt was weaker. And his dancing blade was worse and harder to fully connect. Basically, before Marth got buffed in Smash 4, he was like Ultimate Marth, except worse. Like Pichu, Young Link has only been in 2 Smash games, Melee and Ultimate, so picking the worst and best version is pretty straightforward. The worst version of Young Link is Melee, where he's considered a mid tier. He's basically a faster version of Link in that game with weaker attacks, less range, and a downer that spikes. Fun fact, Young Link was at his competitive peak for Melee when Armada used him as a secret counterpick to beat Hungrybox's Jigglypuff. The best version of Young Link is Ultimate, where he's considered to be at least high tier. What makes Young Link so good in Ultimate is his speed and projectiles. He has a lot of ways to safely pressure the opponent and can easily combo into all of his projectiles and even use them to confirm into kills. Also, I just want to bring this up because I think it's ridiculous, but Young Link's boomerang thrown at point blank range is -4 on shield. That is absolutely insane. Having 4 titles under his belt, Ganon is overall one of the worst characters competitively in Smash. He's been bottom tier in every Smash game except for one, Melee. Although Melee Ganon isn't a horrible character, he isn't a good one either. His mobility is arguably the best it's ever been due to having a solid wave dash, among not having horrible mobility stats. His recovery is by far the best it's ever been thanks to him being able to get an additional double jump when using Wizard's Foot in the air. His damage raking capabilities are solid, and he has good kill power and solid options to set up into kills. The worst version of Ganon is Brawl, who is the worst character in the game competitively, if you don't include Ivysaur. What makes Ganon so bad is that his mobility stats are absolutely horrendous. This makes it incredibly easy to wall or zone him out. He's also very susceptible to chain grabs and other juggling options. If he gets put into a bad spot due to having terrible frame data, he doesn't really have any options to do much about it. If he actually gets a good hit, he doesn't really have a way of getting a follow-up aside from down air, which auto-cancels from a short hop in Brawl, or flame choke, which if connected could not be teched in Brawl, but hitbox-wise lost to just about every move including grab. He also has one of the worst recoveries in the game thanks to them removing his ability to gain a double jump from Wizard's Foot, greatly nerfing his recovery, which wasn't good to begin with. For Mewtwo, I'm gonna get the obvious best out of the way, which is Smash 4. This is the only iteration where Mewtwo has been considered top tier. One of the best things Mewtwo had in Smash 4 was his air dodge. In Smash 4, Mewtwo had the best air dodge in the game due to its startup, end lag, and the fact that he briefly disappears, making it difficult to know exactly where he'll end up, combined with his airspeed. Thankfully for Mewtwo, Smash 4 gave you unlimited air dodges while you're in the air, which benefited him the most compared to other characters, and he abused it heavily. Despite his weight and size, Mewtwo was a very difficult character to hit and pin down due to his great mobility, air dodge, zoning, and range. He also had really strong combos, kill confirms, and the strongest up throw in the entire game for consistently taking stocks. Now for the worst iteration of Mewtwo. This one was hard because I truly felt like it could have gone to either Smash 4 or Ultimate. So for those of you who don't know, Mewtwo was pretty bad in both Smash 4 and Ultimate until he got some massive buffs. Overall, I decided to give it to pre-patch Ultimate Mewtwo because I feel like that character is just much more flawed than the other iteration. One of the main issues that Mewtwo got from Ultimate was the nerf to air dodges. Like I mentioned earlier, he heavily abused the air dodge mechanic in 4 and can no longer do that anymore, which made his keep away game and disadvantage a lot worse. Another big change he got was to his tail hurt box, which was noticeably bigger. This made it even harder for Mewtwo to get away from the opponent, and also made his window to be comboed bigger, which was a significant nerf to him considering his weight. This also made Mewtwo's attacks using his tail less disjointed. His combo game was also nerfed, and his up throw, while still being a solid kill move, was nowhere near what it was in 4. The thing to consider too is that Mewtwo has actually gotten some pretty massive buffs in Ultimate, but he's still not considered a good character competitively. The worst version of Roy is Melee. Melee Roy is basically Marth, except you're playing on very hard mode. His sweet spots are reversed from Marth's, so they're harder to get. This wouldn't be as bad except that his sour spot hitboxes are horrendous and he has noticeably less range than Marth. To make matters even worse, his sweet spot hitboxes aren't nearly as rewarding as Marth's. His recovery isn't that good due to his fall speed and his up B not going very far. He does have some positives, like his down tilt is a really good combo tool, and like Marth, he can combo fast followers really well, but his negatives still just heavily outweigh his strengths. The best version of Roy is Ultimate, where he's considered a top tier. Roy is a lot different to his melee counterpart. One of the biggest changes Roy got was to his jab, which is one of the best jabs in the entire game. His jab is his best combo starter and can be used at just about any percent to start combos or confirm into kills. Though he still has a sour spot at the tip of his sword, landing the sweet spot is significantly easier due to him having better hitboxes and being an overall faster character, plus landing the sour spots aren't as punishing as they are in Melee, and in fact can be beneficial to him at higher percents. He's a strong rushdown character with amazing pressuring tools, incredible kill power, and great kill setups. Mr. Gamewatch's worst iteration is Melee. Unfortunately for the character, he was probably completed around the tail end of the game's deadline, and it shows with how poorly designed he is. He's the only character that has aerials that cannot be L cancelled, which are his neutral, back, and up air. He also has a shield that doesn't completely cover his body, and is tied for being the second lightest character in the game. Surprisingly, he's not a bottom tier character, but he's still not good. He has a decent combo game, a chain grab, and his neutral air is pretty strong and has a really big hitbox. It's just that he gets heavily outclassed by the higher tier characters, and his flaws make it even worse. The best version of Gamewatch is Ultimate. His ability to rack up damage through juggling is one of the best, if not the best, in the game. He also has the best out of shield option in the entire game with his frame 3 up special. His huge disjointed neutral air hitbox makes it easy for him to start or continue the juggle, and his up air can trap the opponent in the air or put the opponent in a vortex. His throws can combo to his aerials, and he has one of the best dash grabs in the game, making it even easier for him to get the grab. His smash attacks have a lot of kill power, and he's one of the only characters in the game that has a smash attack that is completely invincible, which is his up smash that is also difficult to punish because of the low cooldown and being pretty safe on shield. And that is it for this video. This took much longer to make than I initially thought, but I hope you guys enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and sub to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Also, let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree, or just didn't know some of the things I mentioned. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.